Hello there, I'm Liz Ferry and welcome back to my channel. In this video, I'm going to show you how to make a basic lace-up top or bralette out of crochet. I made a basic one-color version, and I made several pride versions using color changes. I'll show you how to make both styles in this video. Some things you'll need for this tutorial are a crochet hook, I'm using a size E, a pair of scissors, some stitch markers or bobby pins, a yarn needle, and whatever yarn you'd like to use to make your top. For my basic bralette, I used chamomile from Sugar and Cream. And for my rainbow top, I used 6 different colors: red, orange, yellow, green, blue, and purple, as well as using pink as a background color. All these were Just Cotton brand from Dollar Tree, except for the yellow, which is from Karen's Baby Cotton line, and the purple, which is an acrylic yarn from Vanna's Choice. I prefer using cotton yarn when I can to make the top a little more comfortable, but that's a matter of preference. Also, some colors are hard to find in cotton, so I used acrylic instead. And of course, feel free to customize your top with any color you like. All the yarns I used were worsted or sport weight yarn, so just stick to that same weight of yarn and you should be fine. I should mention that the top I made is specifically meant to fit my body type. For reference, I have a size D cup and a band size of 38. However, this technique is pretty easy to customize to any size. At the end of the video, I'll talk more about some ways to size down or size up this pattern to fit your needs. And as always, you can find the pattern for this project in my Ravelry store at the link in the description below. To begin my project, I need to make the cups for the bust. First, I need to measure from the point of the bust to the base of the bust here so that I can make my foundation chain that same length. For my size, that means I'll start with a chain of 15. So chain 15 to count as the foundation chain, then to count as the first stitch, I'm going to chain 2 more, since I'll be using double crochets for this project. Now I have 17 chains total. Next, I'll work a double crochet into the 4th stitch from the hook to create the 2nd stitch of the row. And before I go on, I'll use one of my bobby pins to mark the chain 2 as the 1st stitch of the row. Now I'll continue to work double crochets into the next 12 foundation chains until I get to the last chain, where I'm going to increase. Now I've gotten to the last chain of the foundation. To increase this stitch, I'll double crochet 5 times into that same chain. Then before I go on, I'm going to mark the 3rd stitch of my 5 increases with another stitch marker so that I know where to increase in my next row. Then turn the work and double crochet into the other side of each chain of the foundation until the end of the row. And then I'm going to repeat that for 7 more rows to complete the cup. So chain 2 to count as the 1st stitch, mark that chain, and turn the work, then double crochet until that marked 3rd stitch of the 5 increases. Then to increase, once again double crochet into that same stitch 5 times, Mark the third double crochet of the increases, then double crochet in each stitch until the end of the row. And keep repeating that for 6 more rows. When finished, the width of the bottom of the cup should match the measurement from the middle of the chest to the side of the underbust, plus whatever overlap you want the cups to have. For the rainbow version, I changed colors for each row to get the full rainbow effect. I used pink for the first row, then changed colors to purple on the last stitch of the first row, and used purple for the second row. To change colors, I left the last stitch of the row unfinished on the hook, then finished the stitch with a loop of the new color. If you'd like a more detailed explanation on how to color change, check out my color changing tutorial at the link in the description. Then I kept changing colors for each row, creating blue in the 3rd row, green in the 4th row, yellow in the 5th row, orange in the 6th, red in the 7th, and pink again for the last row of the cup. For the NB striped cup, I did 2 rows of yellow, 2 rows of white, 2 rows of purple, and 2 rows of black to make the cups. And for the bi-stripes, I did 3 rows of magenta, 3 rows of purple, and 2 rows of blue to make the cups. Now back to the basic version. Next, I'll create 12 more rows along this side only to make the band around the back of the bodice. So I'll chain 2 to count as the first stitch of the row, then double crochet into the 4th stitch from the hook to create the 2nd stitch of the row. Then I'll double crochet into the next 9 stitches. So I have 11 stitches in the row so far. Now I'm going to make 1 more stitch to end this row. For this last stitch of the row, I'm going to decrease to blend the edges of the row. If you like, you can make the band more narrow by creating fewer stitches for this part. Just make sure to decrease the last stitch to blend the edges. So to decrease, I'll yarn over, pull up a loop in the next stitch, and pull another loop through the 2 loops on my hook as though making a normal double crochet, but instead of finishing the stitch, I'm going to leave it open on the hook. Then yarn over and pull up a loop in the next stitch. Then pull another loop through 2 of the loops on the hook, and then to finish the decrease, I'll pull another loop through the remaining loops on the hook. Now the first row of the band is finished, so to begin the next row, I'll chain 2 to count as the first stitch of the row, and then double crochet into each stitch across. And I'll keep creating rows like that until I've made 12 rows total for the band. I'm only doing 12 rows because I want a bit of a gap so that I can make a lace-up back. But if you want the bodice to attach with a zipper, you'll need to make the back without the gap, and if you're using hooks or buttons, you'll need to make the back overlap. So just go on for a few extra rows if you're doing that. If you like, you can use color changes here too. For the rainbow striped version, I started with a row of red, then 1 orange, 1 yellow, 1 green, 1 blue, 1 purple, then another blue, 1 green, 1 yellow, 1 orange, 1 red, and 1 pink. Now I've finished 12 rows for the band on my plain bralette. Once I get to the end of 12 rows, I'm going to end the work by chaining 1. Then I'll cut off the yarn and sew in the end. Now I need to repeat the exact same thing again to make a second cup for the other side. Except for the second cup, I won't end the work and cut off the yarn. Instead, I'll continue to work along the bottom of the cups to make the underbust of the bodice. To begin the underbust, I'm pretty much going to create 2 double crochets around the posts of each stitch along the bottom here. And when I get to the middle, I'm going to overlap and join the 2 cups together by double crocheting into both cups at the same time. So chain 2 to count as the first stitch, then turn the work and double crochet around the post of the stitch that I just chained up from. Now I'm going to double crochet 2 times around the posts of each stitch, until I get to the third from the last post. And once I get to the end, I'm going to overlap both cups, so the 3 posts that I haven't worked into yet on this cup are lined up with the same 3 stitches on the other cup, but with the bands facing the opposite directions like this. Then I'll work 2 double crochets into each remaining post, working through both cups at once for the next 3 posts. Then I'll continue adding 2 double crochets to each post of the other cup until I reach the end of the band for the other side. I did this part a little differently for the rainbow version, once again using color changes, and I also overlapped the middle of the bust a little differently this time as well. For this part, I made color changes to match the striped cup and band by changing colors every 2 stitches along the bottom. To make the color changes easier and cleaner, I made little bunches of the yarn in each color so that I can use 1 bundle of yarn per color change. This seems like a bit much, but it's definitely easier to manage in the long run, and I think it's worth it because the vertical stripes are so cute. If you want to make it a bit easier on yourself though, you can always just create horizontal stripes here instead, and just do 1 color for the entire row. For the pink stripe at the middle of the cup, I'm actually going to decrease the posts so that the pink stripe is the same width as all the other stripes with only 2 stitches instead of 4. Once again, to create a decrease with double crochets, I'll yarn over and pull up a loop around the post and pull up another loop through the 2 of the loops on my hook as though making a normal double crochet. Then instead of finishing the stitch, I'll leave it open on my hook. Then into the same post, I'll yarn over and pull up a loop again, then pull a loop through 2 of the loops on the hook as though making a normal double crochet, but leave the stitch open on the hook. Then finish the decrease by pulling another loop through all of the remaining loops on the hook. Then I'll do that again for the next pink post. And continue to change colors until the place where I'm going to overlap at the front. Since I did those 2 decreases, that means that I took out 2 stitches from the overall width. To add that width back in, I'm just going to overlap at the front less. So instead of overlapping the front 3 stitches on each cup, I'm just going to overlap 2. For the color changes at the overlapped part, I'm going to match the color to the cup that I want at the front of the overlap. Then I'll continue to do the same on the other side of the cup, changing colors every second stitch to match the rainbow stripes, once again with 2 decreases on the pink stripe at the middle of the cup. Back to the plain bralette. Now that I've finished my row joining the cups together, I'll double crochet for 2 more rows to lengthen the bodice to 3 total rows at the underbust. Of course, you can add as many or as few rows to this part as needed. You could add 17 total rows at the underbust to make a full bodice, like I did for this other one that I made out of variegated yarn. Or add 8 total rows at the underbust to make a crop top like I did with the rainbow striped version. You can also use color changes for this part if you like. If you want to keep it simple, you can use horizontal stripes for this part by changing colors for each row. I made a full-size rainbow top with 17 rows total at the underbust, 3 rows of pink, 1 row of red, then 1 orange, then 1 yellow, 1 green, 1 blue, and 1 purple, then 1 blue, 1 green, 1 yellow, 1 orange, and 1 red, then 3 pink. And when I made my rainbow striped crop top with vertical stripes, I changed colors to match the stripes every 2 stitches for 8 rows total at the underbust. Once I finished, I also decided to add matching fringe to the bottom of each stripe, partially so that I don't have to sew in all these ends left behind by all the color changes. But before I could get much done, Zuko thought it was a good time for a cuddle break. Now back to the plain version. I've gotten to the end of 3 more rows. Now I'll end the work by chaining 1, then cut off the yarn and sew in the end. Next I need to make the straps. I'll start at the back of the bralette and I'll work into the post of the second stitch from the end at the top of the left side of the band. I'm going to pull up a loop around that post and chain 1 to count as the first stitch. Then I'm going to chain 44. This is a long chain, so try not to twist it if you can, but it doesn't really make a difference with the way that I'm making the straps. Once I finish my chain, I'm going to single crochet into the first of those 5 double crochets that I increased with at the top of the left cup, on the side closer to the middle front and further from the armhole. Then I'll chain 3 to begin the next row. Next, I'll turn the work and single crochet around the long chain. Then I'm going to repeat that 10 more times until I get to the bottom. Chain 3 and single crochet around the chain. Then again, chain 3 and single crochet around the chain. And I'll even up my chains as I go to make sure that they end up the same length. When I get to the bottom, I'm going to single crochet again around the same post to end the row. Then I'll repeat that 4 more times, again chain 44. Then single crochet into the second of the 5 double crochets at the top of the left cup. Then I'll start the next row with a chain 3. Now I'm again going to single crochet around the chain, but this time I'm also going to single crochet into the single crochet stitches that I made in the last chain to join the chains together. So single crochet into that stitch, then repeat 10 more times until I get to the bottom. At the bottom, to end the row, I'm going to single crochet around the post of the next stitch. And I'm going to repeat that whole process 3 more times so that I've single crocheted into each of the 5 double crochets at the top of the cup. So chain 44, and single crochet into the 3rd double at the top of the left cup. Then chain 3, turn, and single crochet in the previous row of single crochets around the other chain. Then repeat 10 more times until I reach the bottom. Then single crochet around the same post. Chain 44, and single crochet into the 4th double at the top of the cup, chain 3, turn, and single crochet in the 1st stitch around the chain, then repeat that 10 more times until I reach the bottom. At the bottom, to end the row, I'm going to single crochet around the post of the next stitch. Then one more time, chain 44, and single crochet in the 5th double at the top of the cup. Chain 3, turn, and single crochet in the 1st stitch around the chain, then repeat that 10 more times until I reach the bottom. To end the row, instead of single crocheting around the same post, I'll chain 1 and slip stitch to the post to end the strap, cut off the yarn, and sew in the end. Then I'll repeat the process on the other side, except I need to start on the other side of the bottom, so instead of beginning my work around the post of the 2nd stitch at the top and ending around the 4th stitch post, I'll start around the post of the 4th stitch and end around the post of the 2nd. So pull up a loop around the post of the 4th stitch from the end, at the top of the right side of the back this time. Chain 1 to count as the 1st stitch, then chain 44 and single crochet into the 1st of the 5 double crochets that I made to increase the top of the right cup, this time the stitch closest to the armhole and furthest from the bust. Then chain 3, turn, and single crochet around the chain, and repeat that 10 more times until reaching the bottom, and single crochet around the same post. Then repeat that 4 more times around the posts of the next 2 stitches until all 5 stitches at the top of the cup have a single crochet worked in, and in the final row end the work with a chain 1 and a slip stitch around the post of the 2nd stitch at the back. Cut off the yarn and sew in the ends. If you like, you can make the straps rainbow striped as well. It took me a few tries to get it right, so I didn't film the process, but I ended up doing the first 3 rows using red, the first row of 44 chains, the first row of chain 3s and single crochets, and the second row of 44 chains. Then I changed colors for each row, making the second row of chain 3s and single crochets orange, the third row of 44 chains yellow, the third row of chain 3s and single crochets green, the fourth row of 44 chains blue, and the last 3 rows purple. So the 4th row of chain 3s and single crochets, the 5th row of 44 chains, and the 5th row of chain 3s and single crochets. Then I did the same thing for the other strap, but with the colors in the reverse order. The top is pretty much done now. All I have to do is lace up the back to close it. You could crochet a long chain if you want, or you could use a piece of ribbon, or you could just do what I did here and use a bit of the same yarn to lace up the back. And if you like, you could also make the middle front more fitted by either sewing the cups together at the middle or by adding another strand of yarn at the front to act as a drawstring. I would recommend doing this if you have a larger bust. For the rainbow striped top, I also added a row of slip stitches around the posts of the pink stripe at the middle front, from the base of the cup to the bottom of the underbust to carry the line of the overlapping front all the way to the bottom. And that's the top complete. Before I show you how it looks on, let's talk for a moment about how to fit this pattern for smaller or larger sizes. First off, you can start the project with a smaller or a larger foundation chain. As I mentioned at the beginning, the size of the foundation chain should be the same length as the measurement from the bust point to the underbust. Next, you can make more or fewer rows of double crochet in the cup to make the cup more or less wide, Or to make the cup size even smaller, you could use half double crochet or single crochet stitches instead. Next, to make the band size larger or smaller, the same applies. Either make more or fewer rows in the band, or make single crochet or half double crochet stitches instead. Also, since I made my top with a lace-up back, it's a lot easier to fit, so if you're making a larger size, maybe consider lacing up the back instead of closing it up. And finally, when making the underbust, there's a few things that you could do to alter the fit. You could overlap the middle of each cup more or less, depending on how far apart you want the cups to be. If you have a smaller bust, you might be able to get away with no overlap at all in the middle, but if you need even more support, consider overlapping the middle even more. Of course, the more you overlap at the middle, the bigger the cup needs to be, so consider that in your adjustments. As I mentioned before, if you need to, you can also stitch the two layers of the cups together, or add a lace up front for even more support, especially if you have a larger bust. Another thing you can do is increase or decrease to make the underbust and the waist even bigger or smaller. The best way to do this is by measuring the top against the body that it's made for, so make sure you keep on testing the fit. And lastly, the straps. Same with all the other pieces, you could make them longer or shorter by simply chaining more or less times, or you could also make the straps adjustable in size by starting them at the front instead of at the back and making them extra long to be tied around the neck. I won't be doing this though. Tying straps around the neck will put an uncomfortable amount of pressure on the back and the neck if the top is for a larger cup size. So for bustier folks, I would recommend using a normal strap that attaches at both the front and the back instead of tying it off. If you have a small cup size though, and don't need as much support, go ahead and make the tie-on straps. You could also get away with making thinner straps if it's for a smaller cup size. For a larger cup size though, thin straps may cut into the shoulders, so I would suggest making all 5 rows for the strap to distribute the weight more evenly. And now my bralette tops are done. I'm going to show you guys the fit wearing another shirt underneath so that YouTube doesn't demonetize the video over my larger bust size, but if you'd like to see what it actually looks like, I'll be posting pictures to my Instagram @LizFairy and on Patreon. Let me know what you think in the comments. As always, if you made a project using this or any of my designs, I'd love to see it. You can find my social media links in the description below, or you could tag me on Instagram to show me what you've made. If you liked this video, you could press the like button or share it on social media, and if you'd really like to help out the channel, you can donate to my Patreon. You can get some cool perks through Patreon, like seeing my videos early and ad-free. You can find out more about that at patreon.com/fairyrings. I've never tried making anything like this before because I was afraid that I wouldn't be able to get a good fit on my larger bust. But I'm happy to say that this is one of the best fitting, best supporting things I've worn in a long time. It makes me excited to try making more clothes in the future. What other articles of clothing do you think I should try to make next? Leave your suggestions in the comments and make sure that you subscribe to the channel and ring the bell to get notifications every time I post. Thanks so much for watching, have a very happy Pride, and I'll see you all next time. Bye!